Welcome. We are so glad that you joined us for our 2022 webinar series and tonight's tour through a suburban native landscape. I'm Tammy Thompson, and I am the Outreach and Conference Manager for Deep Roots. And I'm delighted to spend this evening with you, at least the next hour. First of all, we want to thank the Alvin L. Gottlieb Foundation and the Missouri Department of Conservation for their sponsorship of this webinar series. This webinar will be recorded and up on the Deep Roots website within about 24 hours. You will also receive an email with the recordings link and any resources mentioned during the broadcast. During the program, if you have questions, please note those in the Q&A tool on Zoom, and we will get to as many of those as we can. And I'll be using the chat feature to send you links and references mentioned during the webinar. We will be awarding a prize to one lucky participant at the end of the broadcast, so stay tuned until the very end. With that, I am honored to introduce Alaine Hudlin, Wildlife and Education Specialist at the Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks, and our homeowner, Kathy. Alaine is arguably the most knowledgeable wildlife educator in this area. In addition to her wildlife and plant knowledge, her enthusiasm for the topic is infectious. She will wow us with her knowledge of the intersection of wildlife and native plants, as well as the balance nature can teach us. Kathy is a do-it-yourselfer to the core. Her knowledge of native plants is only dwarfed by her adventurous spirit in her garden. She will inspire you to try new and different plants in your own landscape and reap the benefits later. And if you'll remember, if you were here in January, this is the very same landscape that we looked at. This is the same garden and home that we looked at in January. So we saw it in January and we saw the wildlife there in January, and we're going to see it today and see how the wildlife and the plants are actually morphing and really just making a beautiful lawn. So take it away, Kathy and Alaine. Let's roll tape.
Yeah. No sound. Okay. Yep, no sound.
I'm Kathy, and this is my friend Alaine.
Hi, I'm with Kansas Wildlife and Parks.
And this is my home, and what I'm trying to do is naturalize as much of it as I can so that it's less maintenance, no chemicals, less water, and most importantly, it invites the wildlife in. So the squirrels, which you can hear, the birds, which are always buzzing around, always singing, and the bees and everything that buzz.
Well, and what I really like, I was so astounded when I drove up, Kathy, because it looks great. What good cover for wildlife to kind of get into, especially in spring when those young are going to be emerging and they're not maybe fast hoppers or they don't fly well. You've got a lot of cover that will also provide some food sources. Yeah, so I've been with Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks for, oh my gosh, Kathy, 27 and a half years.
Well, you know a lot. And the thing that I like about Alaine is that not only does she appreciate the plants, but it's the relationship between the plants and the wildlife that makes everything so special.
The way it all works is fascinating, isn't it, Kathy?
It is.
The fun of it, I know.
Well, I want to tell you about a few things we have going here.
Okay.
And here, step over here. And what we've got is sort of a wildlife area that I put together when we had to replace the steps because they were falling apart. And so there is some Vinca here, which I call ancestral Vinca because it's been handed down in my husband's family for about 6 or 7 generations. And so everybody gives somebody a snippet, and I'm going to take some of it out and give some to my daughter so that it will make room for more of the wildflowers. People probably recognize the Columbine, which is here.
Yeah.
And you can't see this very well, but it's a little fuzzy plant called woodland phlox or Phlox divaricata. And it has the most beautiful violet, purple, blue flowers. It was the Garden Club of America's Native Plant of the Year this year.
Isn't that exciting?
That is kind of exciting. And here's one that was the Native Plant of the Year 2 years ago. This is called Prairie Smoke. And it has a beautiful flower, kind of fuzzy flower that comes off of it. It's a geum. And 2 years ago, I think that was the Native Plant of the Year.
Now, how old is that plant there?
2 years.
Okay, so in 2 years, that's a pretty good estate.
Yeah, and there's another one over there we'll look at in a minute that's a little bigger.
And what is this little one
Oh,
right here?
I love this.
Darling, yes.
This is false rue anemone. And the reason you know it's false rue anemone is because I think it has 5 petals and rue anemone has 7.
Oh, it's
Or it's
delicate,
vice
beautiful.
versa. Let's see, how many does this have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah.
Yeah.
And I had to look it up, but I found that growing in a lawn and they were mowing it. And so
They were mowing that
Yeah.
beautiful little flower?
yeah, people sometimes don't appreciate it, you know, especially if it's turf. What's important is the grass and you don't want anything else growing in it.
Well, and I love the height that it gets.
Yeah,
It
it's,
doesn't get unruly.
yeah, it's sort of like thalictrumy. Yeah, anyway.
Beautiful.
And the Columbine, I did not plant that
Oh.
there, but they're really happy with limestone outcropping areas, and I think all the stone around here made it think it was a great place to live.
Yeah, it's
And-
a beautiful, healthy plant.
And then we've got some wild ginger here, which I think is really fun to see, and there's more back there, and there's some trout lily planted there too. And I love these cute little cedar sedges.
Do they
And
get
the-
any taller than
No,
this?
this one is really short.
I
And this
love
one
it.
the squirrels dug up, and so what I've found is that if I put stones around it, they don't
Oh,
dig it up.
Little rascals.
But this is a sedge. That was a sedge that they dug
well,
up.
but I see the root system, so
Oh.
I'm thinking that if you can get it back down there,
Well, maybe.
it might kick back up. We
Yeah,
can hope.
the squirrels dig it up. And then the hard thing to do, though, is to tell sedges apart from grasses.
Right.
And this, I think this may be a sedge here, but I don't think this is. And tell them
Well, so
how we know the difference.
Right. So if you pull down, and just you don't want to if you can't feel it well, yeah. See, that's not triangular, right?
Right?
So that would, I think you're right. This is a grass. So learning your stems, what you're looking at or feeling, really, isn't it? Whether it's round, triangular, square.
And so
it'll
if
help
I
you.
think this is a grass, what's the stem going to be like?
Well, it should just be like this one is. Well, see now, look at right here. That feels triangular to me. This is where you have to be so careful.
Well, I know some of this is probably.
Well,
So I'm going to come
like
here
this
and
one
pull
right
it up.
Here.
This
Yeah.
is a grass, yeah.
Yes, this one is a grass. Well, why don't you pull one of that and let's compare it to what we definitely know is a grass. And then let's take a look. So this one is going to be more round, right? And you see do you see the definite size
This
on
one
that?
is triangular.
It's triangular, so that is a sedge.
Oh, well, my God, you saved me from pulling it out.
Well,
I would have pulled it out.
Let's sore fingers.
Okay, now what we have here was a grass area that grass didn't grow in very well. And so Penstemon over there started seeding in the grass over here, and I just said, let's not mow it. So this has been going on for 2 years, and I've got some grass coming up there, which I'm going to take out because I've been planting forbs and grasses in this area that are all native. And pretty soon, once I start digging out grass, it will all be that, and then we'll have green mulch. And we have some little, just those little sedges, the same
Yeah.
sedges that we had over there are here, and these are all blooming.
And
They're really happy here.
And yeah, I can see it's going to start spreading out.
Mhm.
Now you've got this plant here,
Oh,
and I know I can see you're thinking, oh no, is this a dogwood? Is this a Japanese bush honeysuckle?
I think it's a Japanese bush
Well,
honeysuckle.
you know what? There is a test that you can do that's super easy. with
Show
the
me.
leaf. Okay, so take one of the leaves, all right, and this is something fun you can even have children go out and do, and you carefully peel it apart. If it is a dogwood, you can do the magic leaf test. There are fibers. If it is a Japanese bush honeysuckle, those fibers do not exist in the leaf, and it won't do the magic leaf test.
So this is not a bush honeysuckle.
Another one that kind of told me that is this early color. So at this point now you have a decision to make, right? If it's not in the right place, then you can remove it. If you want to let it grow and see what happens, it is one that does allow good habitat for
That's really
wildlife.
cool.
Yeah.
I thank you, Elaine. That's a
Well,
great tip.
Sure. And it's so easy.
Yeah.
Doesn't cost you a thing. It's important. I see you've got a lot of early bloomers here.
Yep.
So people might be interested in knowing what they can plant to bring those pollinators some help.
Well, if you don't like dandelions, which I actually do,
I do too.
This is a good pop of yellow, and it's called Golden Alexander or Zizia, and it's rhizomatic. So you don't want, it has really thick, sturdy roots. So
Isn't that fascinating? Look at that.
So you really don't want to plant it in an area where you think it might take off because it could take over. But I like it. I mean, here it's sort of everyone for itself. And here I leave these plant tags in the ground sometimes because there's so much going on and there's so much that I need to take out, like this grass, which I'm going to work on this year. But this is bottle gentian or closed gentian, and it's coming up. The pop-up leaves here that are elliptical are the penstemon that started this whole meadow because they are so good at self-seeding.
And I love how you see the dandelions popping in there.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. When you're talking about pollinators really needing help, you need those ones that will bloom early to help them.
You're right.
And dandelions are one of those. And you and I have joked about henbit before too.
Yeah.
But it is one of those early bloomers, though it's not native. It is a good balance to help the pollinators out.
Yeah, I think
And-
so too.
Yeah.
And I think they're pretty. I think I told you before I was in Iceland and there were all these beautiful blue flowers and yellow flowers, and I wondered what the yellow flowers were, and they were all dandelions. And it was the most incredible landscape ever.
Isn't that fascinating?
So we sometimes have to think about what we think is a weed and what could be really beautiful. Right here, poking through the ground, I didn't know if they were coming back, but these are sensitive ferns, and see the little fiddleheads
Oh, I love it.
and how they're unfurling. I
Oh,
just
look.
think they're so beautiful.
Look at, I see.
Oh,
Those are beautiful.
look at
Oh, aren't
those.
those cute?
Oh, they're really
darling.
neat.
You've got them all over.
Yeah.
I thought you were worried that you had lost them.
No, these were from the river behind my house in Ohio.
Oh, really?
Uh-huh. What we've got here is a big stand of ginger with some vinca growing up in among it, but you can see that the ginger is really outcompeting the vinca, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
And we saw the blooms over there. What we don't see yet is this marybells that's going to come up in the middle of the ginger, kind of like these beautiful bluebells are right
a little
now.
bit later bloomer than Kathy.
Right. The marybells are later.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And this, I don't know if this is an awfully thick grove of ginger. Did it just?
It just spread. It's just
Wow.
happy.
Yeah, it is very happy, and I do like the fact that you're right. It's choking out some of those that you were having to pull
Right.
in
right.
years past that
Yes.
we talked about.
Yeah.
So that's helpful.
Well, do you know, I have to tell you one thing that I have done every year, and that is I have my yard sprayed. And you think, oh, sprayed. Well, the deal with this is it's a tea, and it has macrorhizae, trace elements, especially good bacteria, all of those kinds of things. And soil scientist Hillary Noonan is the one
she's
who
great.
comes over and sprays. And I will tell you, since she has been doing it, everything in my yard grows better and is happier.
Well, it makes people are used to non-native plants, and they're always fertilizing and checking the
Right.
soil, and we have messed up this soil so much, and yet
Right.
they're thinking, why aren't these natives just growing in basically trash?
Right.
And it's because we've messed up that soil. Remember, you and I have talked about our place,
Yes.
right? Our place in this natural society, and how do we help this natural society flourish? And we understand that there are going to be non-natives like the dandelions and natives, and it's about balance and how do you bring this about. And I do find it interesting that if we are the ones messing this up, then we're the greatest answer. And you're right, it means even
We all
if it's
need to
native,
know our role.
Yeah.
And do no harm for the bad stuff. But I look at it like the soil is foundational. And if you don't have good soil, you can't grow anything. And then the plants are what provides all this habitat and food for everything else. And the soil also to a degree, because there are a lot of bugs that live in the soil.
It's definitely
Anyway, it is really fun. And since I've had Hillary come, everything grows better.
That's great. I'm so thankful for Hillary in helping people understand that the soil is not right, and even for natives, they need help.
Right.
Once they're well established and everything's going, then it can work. But when you look at 600 different plants that can be in a prairie, and they're all working together,
Yeah.
well, that tells you that there are a lot of nutrients. There's a lot of life in there. These microbes that different plants help establish. You've got all of this different stuff coming together, and we expect it all to spring forth from inert soil.
Well, I always used to compost and I use all my kitchen compost, but until this started happening, no longer do I use any fertilizer, no longer do I use any herbicides or pesticides, well, except to get rid of the calorie pear. You want to walk over this stump,
Your
which
problem child?
calorie pear.
Yes.
By the way, I have cut it back. See all those sticks?
Yes.
I have surgically applied pesticide or herbicide to it. It is coming back here. It's coming back over there. It's coming back from all the roots. So I just have to be vigilant to make sure it doesn't reemerge. But the thorns on it, on the new emergence, are 2.5 inches long.
And you might think, I don't know if it's possible. This is going to be difficult because you've got a really nice establishment, but almost grinding out those stumps is about the only way, without a lot of work, to get this out.
I'm not going to grind out the stumps. I'm just going to fight it.
Then fight away,
Yeah.
Kathy. I love the spirit.
But in contrast to that horrible stump is this beautiful colony of pussy toes.
I love them.
And we saw bees and flies, several species of bees and flies on it. They really love this.
That's what I loved, was the variety of pollinators coming to it, and it's happy here.
Yeah.
The abdomen, I wish that one would come back.
You can tell it moves differently.
Yeah, they move different.
They're more
they-
flighty.
They will definitely hold to their
There
own
it is. There's a
hives.
fly.
Yeah, and the abdomens on these flies, because it's breeding season, they're coming up with a vibrant, do you see that?
Yes.
Iridescence. And they're like, hey, look at me. Isn't that, I mean, it's a...
Yeah, it is. And then moving right along, we have this Verbena, which I never imagined would establish itself as well as it has. I thought it would go this way, instead it's going that way. Yeah. But it is just so robust right now. And then there's a little bit of broom sedge coming up right there.
Yeah, it's
And-
just starting to wake up, isn't it?
Yeah, and out of our view along there, I have a row of little blue stem, which is not emerging yet. And this, I don't see any harm in this, but this is sweet woodruff or Gallium odorata, and it is really pretty little white blooms, and it also colonizes and does a nice mat that fills in and means you don't have to weed.
Well, I like that it offers good cover for wildlife. A lot of what you've got offers such good cover for wildlife, especially with spring coming on, and you've got a lot of the young, and they need to be able to find that cover for protection.
Yeah.
And kind of scoot out of view. This is great. Well, and look at the bees working.
Yeah.
All of it as we go through. It's so good to see. The
That
bees
is
out
pretty
back.
fun. That's for sure. More robins, plantain, and so on. Oh, I have a redbud, a dogwood that's blooming. So what we have here is a pawpaw, and the tale has it that Lewis and Clark lived on pawpaws on their way back to St. Louis, from Kansas City to St. Louis. They'd run out of food, and this is the first year this has really bloomed this well. I planted a few years ago, and then when we took out the Bradford pears, it got whacked, and that one did too. That one hasn't come back quite as well, but I guess it does take 2 pawpaws to set fruit. So this year, maybe we'll have pawpaw jam or whatever. I have some really cool Solomon seal. They look like little swords sticking up from the ground, and they have little white flowers that hang down, and they're truly beautiful. And it's always fun to see them emerge because they come up kind of like a stalk of asparagus. It's a little barren strawberry with beautiful yellow flowers, and it's a great ground cover. So I'm hoping it'll travel across and fill in some of these areas, and then I can keep ripping up the ivy and other things I don't like.
Does it have a very big fruit?
No, no fruit. It's barren.
No fruit?
No.
It's just barren.
Yep.
So
And over there you can see the Solomon seal. Here are 2 different kinds of clematis, both of which I like. They're both native, and they have bell-shaped flowers that drop down, and probably the vine gets to be about 10 feet maybe. But it's a very delicate clematis, and one that I particularly like.
Right. So both of these. The
Yes,
leaves
they're
are
2
so
different species of
Uh-huh.
clematis. And I can't remember. One is, I can't remember.
Well, this is one of those times when if we had our phones, which we don't, we would bring out that app.
Yeah, we would.
Take a picture, and it would remind us which one is which.
Yeah.
And when are these going to bloom?
In the spring and early summer.
Great. Well, they're beautiful.
Thanks. And so, Alaine, the celandine poppy never disappoints, particularly this time of year. And I find I can keep them blooming almost all summer. Not like this, but when they get sort of brown and not so great, I snip them out and more come up and they bloom some more.
And is it, so they right now they're kind of in shade, but there aren't leaves on that tree and they're in a shade. So what is it like here in
Well,
when you're still getting them to bloom? Do they get a lot of sun?
They get pretty good afternoon sun.
Afternoon sun.
They do.
Yeah.
They do. What fun today, Alaine.
You know what? More than I even expected. And things going in places you didn't even think.
I know.
But it
And
looked
some of the
terrific.
bad guys coming back.
Oh, well, isn't
that Bradford pear is not going to give up, but I will win.
You are a fighter, Kathy, and I hate to say it, but that Bradford pear, it better watch out.
Yeah.
Because I saw one that you definitely took its toll on, and this other one, you'll
Well,
win. It
that's
just
it.
takes time.
It's going to take time.
Yeah.
But gardening, what a beautiful day to be out in the garden, and what things we discovered and what things I learned from you about the turtles and the strawberries, and it's just fantastic. I'm
is.
sorry you didn't get to see my May apples, but next time.
Well,
You'll have to
peeked
come
at
back
them.
soon because they'll be
Yeah, they're not blooming quite
no.
yet.
These spring ephemerals are not long for the world, but it's been such a lovely, cool spring that we've enjoyed them more. So I'm so glad to enjoy it with
Thank
you.
you for having me over, and I
Let's
love
do it
all this.
again.
Okay.
Okay.
When summer
In the
comes,
summer, we'll
yes.
check it out then.
Yeah. And what I'm hoping to see is some of those bird nests that have been established that hopefully are abandoned because they got their clutch off the ground. I don't know. I'll have to see. I keep seeing a brown-headed cowbird. I've got to see if I'm going to see
Well,
some of that
they'll do
young.
what they do.
They'll do what they do. I'll tell you. It's all about life.
Spring is coming this week,
Thank
and
heavens.
here we are in the middle of it. So nice to have you here.
Oh, thank you for having me once again. It was so much fun.
Good.
That was excellent. Elaine, why don't you come on? There you are.
Here I
So glad
am.
to see you.
Oh yeah, it was so much fun.
That was so much fun. And Elaine, I know in the editing process, we lost some of our wildlife
Oh,
questions. So I want to ask you, why is a brown-headed cowbird kind of a little stinker?
well, because as many probably know, it is one of our parasitism birds. So it likes to lay its eggs in other bird nests, and they hatch earlier than generally the bird species that they're in, and they get the other little boogers out of the nest, and then they get to
Oh,
grow up. So I'm not sure. Cardinals are mid-level nesters, and I know we all watched that brown-headed cowbird was definitely on that pair of cardinals that
yeah.
were kind of flitting about. So I'm hoping I'll have to go check to see what happens with that nest, because they're mid-level nesters. You can kind of take a peek at their
Yeah.
level. Yeah.
So the cowbird kicks the cardinal eggs out and the cardinal sits on the cowbird eggs. Is that how that?
Yeah. It's life.
It's life. That's like a Dr. Seuss book right there.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
It's the way things work. Hopefully they'll be able to rebound back and have some cardinal babies as well. So it'll be interesting to see. I don't know. A lot of times there's some good protection there. So we'll just have to see if they're successful.
That is really intriguing. And we also had some, during our walk, we were talking about some things that you probably wanted to remind our listeners about, some just tips and tricks on work and being outside and in wildlife. And one was the bird flu, but the other was what to do when you encounter the wildlife. So
right. Yeah, just those quick reminders, because I think so many people that are in our group, which is so much fun, they have young kiddos or adults even around them that may not know. And we have to remember that young rabbits, their defense is to freeze, since they don't have a smell that a predator like our dog recognizes. That's why you'll see dogs carrying these baby bunnies around, and they're not acting aggressive towards it. They literally don't know what it is, because it does not smell like the adult. And since they hop fast, their way of being safe is to freeze. And they're hoping, the students that I talk to, they always laugh, but they're really hoping that you think it's a clod of dirt or a rock, whatever. The second that we go and move them, we can cause a lot of problems. And I always tell one thing that adults may want to tell children that seems to resonate with them when I talk to them, is that we always talk about stranger danger with young children. And I always tell them, no matter what the wild animal is, number one, if the wild animal doesn't act afraid of you, something is right. Something is wrong. It should be afraid of you. But number two, when we approach wildlife, we are a stranger to that wild animal.
Yeah.
And just as we don't want strangers to come up, I always ask the students, so do you want a stranger to come up and poke on you? And they're obviously like, no. Would you want
I don't want anyone to come up and poke on me, whether I know them or not.
I'd slap them, right? Or pick you up and walk off. And so reminding the young ones that you are a stranger to that wild animal, and that wild animals will protect themselves, just like they should protect themselves from a stranger. Then that helps them. And they often understand then that, we need to do. We also talk about birds. Yes, only the turkey vulture has the sense of smell. Other birds do not. So that's really not true to tell them that mom won't take them back because They can
Oh,
smell
oh,
the
that's
heat.
interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, and turkey vultures want to vomit disgusting green stuff on you, so you don't want to help them out anyway.
The
They're
sense
part
of
of the
smell is
tribe.
overrated in birds.
But one of the things that I felt like that you can tell them is that we had to learn to walk and birds have to learn to fly. So oftentimes if you see a fledgling out of the nest, keep away the cats, keep away the dogs,
Yeah.
but realize that that young bird has to learn to fly. And if you let the little ones know that birds' bones are hollow, so if you pick them up, you can easily break a bird's bone and it won't heal, then that kind of helps them. I always say watch wildlife. I'm fascinated by wildlife, obviously, and I watch it, but I don't want to directly interfere with it. And just one quick note, we are so fortunate that bird flu is not really hitting us hard like some other areas.
Good.
But I think that we all should be aware that it is spring, and distemper is going to come into raccoons. We have all these other things that can happen. Please do wildlife a favor and leave them alone.
Mhm.
And if you think that there is a problem, then contact the wildlife department of your state, contact your animal control, but please don't try to approach that animal. Number one, you're a stranger. Number two, if they're sick, there's just a lot of, things that can happen. So we wanted to just mention that because we're all going to be out and about, hopefully, in our gardens.
I'm planning to.
Yeah, well, and I have to tell you, I just had, excuse me. So I've been checking for my milk snake. I get a milk snake every spring under this one area. Well, actually, I've had several different ones. But anyway, the point is, I love my milk snakes. And I didn't have them today. I was hoping to be able to report to you all, I had my milk snakes, but I did have ringnecks, and I already had a shed from one of my longer ringnecks.
Really?
Yeah. So that's exciting because it's been such a
cold, yeah.
Cold time. So anyway, that was fun. Snakes, just please remember that they're blending in with things. They do so much good in our rodent control that we really need them. Obviously, no one's super happy about venomous snakes around, so be careful. I always tell people, they always tell me this one, well, you can tell a venomous snake by the cat's slit eyes, and that's not true for all venomous snakes. But I always tell them that if they're that close to see cat's eyes, I think you're too close.
I think you're just a little too
close. Too close. I don't, let's not go with that one.
That's a really good point.
Right. I always tell people, when we're out there, even if it's our yard, we're in their home, and you see one, just back up and realize it's doing a great job, because a rodent might want to get in your house and it stopped it. So it's all, again, it's back to that balance.
Yeah. I like snakes, but I don't like surprises. So sometimes that's the challenge, is they usually kind of catch me a little off guard. But we have a question from Laura. Actually, Laura kind of has a statement/question. She says, wonderful about the cowbird. I've seen much less of them this year. Planting elderberry, serviceberry, buttonbush, and beautyberry to encourage more places for low nesters. So what are the low nesters? Which are low?
Well, you think about, we've got some of our literally ground nesters, and killdeer are such ones that people recognize right off the bat, and they'll show up in our areas. We do have people mistake killdeer for prairie chickens. They are not. You're going to probably have killdeer, not prairie chickens, in the area. And then your thrashers. You've got a lot of different species that are going in there. So also remember, this is good. Thank you for that statement, because it's true. We often plant those bushes around our windows. And then the males see the reflection, and so, really research things that you can do if you're having some aggression. Sometimes they get to your car window or the mirror on the car, and they kind of really wreak havoc with situations. They can't really hurt anything that you have, but they can sometimes be annoying. So research some of those things to stop that glare. Think about when you're planting your bushes, what exactly you can look up online. Make sure you check your sources about what animals are attracted to particular plants, and make sure that what you're planting in certain areas are animals that you want, because you plant it, and if they're in the area, they will come to it. And people often tell me, well, I've got this horrible problem with whatever species it is, but they've literally got perfect habitat for it. So that's great about the mid-levels and the bushes. Thank you for that. And
that's a great one.
And the window things. So yeah, just really check that out.
Okay. And Connie, if you can hear us, we are checking with others. We have video for everyone else that we're checked with, has video showing. So maybe we can, in the chat, give you some options there. Now, Stacia asks, I've heard that non-native honeysuckle is not only non-nutritious, but can be a bad nesting tree for birds. Can you tell us more about this? That's a great one.
Yeah, that is a great one. And that's so true. Well, it goes back to, I tell people that one of the things about dandelions, Kathy and I kind of have an agreement on dandelions. Let's take this. Let's take the difference between native and naturalized.
Okay, that's a great way to do it. Yeah.
Right, and then invasive versus naturalized. So Japanese bush honeysuckle, all the other honeysuckles, they are invasive because they often are monoculture. They'll want to take over an entire area, and they don't provide basic nutrition and the needs of our native wildlife. So people say, yeah, but then Alaine, what about dandelions? And dandelions are naturalized, right? They're not native, they are naturalized. But we rely heavily on honeybees. And people often forget honeybees are not native. Right. Most of the species that I'm out seeing are the Italian strains. Those are very popular strains for our honey. And so when you're dealing with an animal that is like a plant naturalized and something that we depend on, we have to remember that sometimes that balance comes in, and dandelions and that henbit are one of those. They're early bloomers. There's a lot of use for them. You can use their leaves in the salads, in your salads. I love them. And so the Europeans brought those over because they understood that their bees were not from here. Were they going to find enough for their bees? And so they brought them in with them for their food source as far as salads and things, but also for the bees. So you've got some definitions here. To me, there's no such thing as a native weed. I'm sorry, my favorite plant, well, not my favorite, I've got tons of favorite plants, but one of my favorite plants is jewelweed.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Why are we calling jewelweed a weed? So to me, a weed is a non-native invasive plant that the honeysuckles, the non-native honeysuckles are a great example of. Right? So those are weeds. They're non-native, they're invasive, they don't have, teasel is another great one, not a really good, well, actually, just not good plants. Then you have your naturalized plants, and those are your dandelions and others that have been here long enough. I will tell you, it's a long process, but believe it or not, Japanese bush honeysuckle, because it's a monoculture, Johnson grass, because it's a monoculture, they literally choke themselves out. They grow so much, they take everything out of the soil. There's nothing putting back in. Remember, a prairie, you've got all these different plants putting nutrients in, others are taking it out. Some, like, if you have allergies, sure, ragweeds rough on allergies, and goldenrod is too. And I know that we often say plant goldenrod in your gardens. There are some alternatives if you're one that really gets affected by it. But ragweed and sunflower and some of these that are thought of as weeds, they literally nutrient and moisture content the soil to the point that they can't grow. Their job is to reestablish the soil. It's just a very slow process, right? And so your weeds that come in that are not native and do that monoculture damage, they literally strip the soil to the point that they choke themselves out. But it takes a long time. And that's originally how dandelions became naturalized and some of the others. Don't be fooled. There were times when they took over everything and choked themselves out, and then other plants were coming back in. I personally would rather not have the pear and the honeysuckle as ones. But that's one of the problems that come in with the non-natives is that they're not well established for our wildlife, and they're just monoculture nuisances in my book.
They are, and often there's a desert underneath them. The soil, the soil, nothing can grow under, and then the soil can't get what it needs. So you're right. It's just that. Yeah. Hillary asked a great question, and this is actually the Hillary of the compost tea fame.
Oh, Hillary knew.
Hillary knew.
Emailing, yes.
Yeah.
Hi, Hillary.
So she said, my neighbor sprayed a lot of herbicide last year that caused a lot of damage, but worse, I had dead bees. Can I allow things to bloom this year, or will the bees still be poisoned? Is there any way to know? That's a great question.
Yeah, that is a great question. Well, everything depends on what they used, number one.
Okay.
But I would suspect that the bee turnover is pretty strong. So I would think that the bees are those that are alive are probably fine at this time. Again, some herbicides are residual, which is such a problem. Even non-residual end up being residual, right? They end up in a plant. Yeah. And so this is just my guess. But depending on what time of year it was and everything, because of the turnover life of the bees, I would think of. Now, if it's Hillary, are you talking the European or are you talking native bees? Because we have to remember the bumblebee. It's just queen, so you're probably okay if you're talking, because they don't colonize the same as the European bees.
She says bumblebees.
Oh,
so
I think you're fine.
But real.
Check out if that's a residual chemical or not, Hillary. Just try and sneak that answer out of them. And put your tea down. Just spray your tea over.
Your tea. Get your Oh, we don't have any other questions in queue, but what do you have anything that we should have asked that we didn't?
Well, can we spend a little time on some native ground covers?
Yeah, that would be super.
Okay, good. So Kathy did such a great job of putting in some ground covers. And one of the things that I got to thinking is, one of the things that I think that we can do as we're checking through our ground covers is if they're aggressive, their aggression level. Okay. So there are some great ground covers that are not strongly aggressive, right? And those are ones that you can try out in areas. And I think, don't we have some good lists?
Yes, we have some great lists
of these. Yeah. And so check out our lists on here of some ground covers, especially if you go to ones that are native to the United States, but maybe not native to that area. Maybe you have a special circumstance in your soil. In fact, jewelweed is a great example. Jewelweed is good if you're in eastern Kansas and you're east, but if you're on the other side going west, it is actually considered a noxious weed in
Well,
some.
that makes
some of the
sense.
states.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yet if you live along a creek, if you have a damp area, jewelweed is not only poppingly beautiful, but it's really good for the hummingbirds. It's great, and for our long-tongued bees. So you can utilize it there. But then we have the low-growing ground covers,
Mhm.
and I was, Kathy and I were talking about how some of it just takes over, and I wanted to let people, remind them to check on our lists. And look, we have a lot of different ground covers that have low aggression. Check out what areas they need. The other thing I'd say is, if you're having a problem with your neighbors, wildlife, depending, don't care that much if they're real tall and lanky, and
Yeah.
that's when we get into trouble with our neighbors. One of the things I really liked about, and I just love about Kathy's yard, is she sticks to lower growing ones that won't get so unruly that the neighbors are getting upset. So check some of those things out too, as far as that goes. I don't know about you all, but right now, because I've got a creek area, I've got the woodland fox emerging great. Your jewelweed is later, but I always love seeing that. I love spiderwort. I love spiderwort.
like
I don't
that
know
one
why.
too.
Yeah, it takes a damper soil. It can get a little unruly. So if this is an area that might have a lot of visual, that might be one that you just want to try to put in an area that isn't so out front if you have
Oh,
complaining
that's a good
neighbors.
idea.
Yeah,
Perfect.
yeah. Put those in. Absolutely put those in, but just remember that.
That's good. That's good information. So, Elaine, I didn't tell you this. Oh, Val asks, and then Elaine, I want you to think about this, and I want you to think of one of the creatures that you featured in the video. Don't say it, because that's going to be the prize winner. So whoever can guess it, whoever guesses one of the creatures that
it was mentioned, and we. Okay, yeah, and we do need to
think
go
of
back
it,
to it.
and don't give it away yet, and don't make any no body language that gives it away. And while you're doing that, Val asks, will violets exclude or squeeze out other natives? Mine are solid rhizomes in some gardens.
Yeah, that's one of those aggressive, right? And we all know that. Those are one of the aggressives. And so, yeah, they can, again, it goes back to the same thing that's going to happen. If they completely cover an area, pretty soon, unless you've got Hillary or others coming in and kind of helping right that soil, then they're just leaching. And so they are one of those aggressive. I love them.
Okay.
I think pairing them with some other plants, check it out. Mine kind of can stay at bay depending on what I've got them paired by. And that's one of those things, Kathy and I talked about that with the ginger. What can you do because that one is beautiful, and those flowers, you got to get in there to look at them, but they're stunning.
They are.
But then all of a sudden you've got it everywhere. And so, yeah, that's one of those, but there are some things that you can do. Check out some of the other shaded ground covers that we've got listed, and pair that one with another aggressive one, and see if you can't hold it at bay.
Keep them.
Yeah, let them fight it out.
Working with each other instead of against.
Yeah.
And okay, 2 last questions, and then we're going to go quickly to the prize patrol. Jan Walter asks, ground cover for erosion.
That's such a good one. Here's one of the first things. I'm working with a school on this, and so they're having a lot of problems with this. One of the things that I would suggest is that you get some of the straw, what do they call those, wattles or whatever. They're to try and slow things down. The other thing I do is I have horses and I feed prairie hay, and so that's always a good holler at me, you guys. I can probably give you a little bit of prairie hay to put in those areas. And then if it's prairie hay, then the seed is prairie.
Yeah.
So it's not so bad.
So, yeah.
And then there are some really good ground covers that will fill in for that. Hang on, I got to put my eyes on to see, but I did think that somebody might ask that. And so I pulled up a few to think about. Yeah, see a ragwort, that's high aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
But our animal likes it. Can I say that?
Yeah.
Our prize animal likes it.
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
There's a hint.
Here's another hint. You can utilize the native strawberries. We talked about the Barren Strawberry, and it depending on where your erosion problem is, it's pretty good. But remember, it doesn't have a fruit, and believe it or not, although it's covered with a lot of pollen, its flower shape is more fly attractive
and
than
bee
attractive, but still a really good one. Hang on, that's wanting my face ID. Hold on a minute. You might try a low aggressive one that is often called the green and gold. It's the Virginian. Yeah, you can try something like that. Those are a few that I will see if there was anything else. Those might come in and kind of, establish it. Here's the problem with erosion. You get down to clay base. And then you're into sod busting type of plants that you need. So it really kind of depends on, am I totally red from that? I'm looking, am I all red? That's okay.
You look great, Alaine.
Oh, do I? Well, thank you.
You just look amazing.
The sun's coming through, so
that's good.
What it is.
Another day that the sun came up and the sun goes down. It's a good one.
It's a good day.
It's a good day.
Yeah, but I would look at that. I wish it was easy, but some of these that'll go into maybe more depleted soils would work well. But I think that depending on your erosion, get something in like your straw or some prairie hay. You're going to have to kind of mush it down a little bit, use some rocks to get things established. See if that doesn't help. If it doesn't help, give me a holler. I mean, I'm happy to.
And everyone knows how to reach us.
Okay.
All right. So here's the prize. The first person who put in the chat, the creature in Elaine's mind that was covered in the broadcast. What was it, Alaine?
The box turtle. And
the
we need
box
to cover
turtle.
more.
Does it have to be box? Will you give turtle?
You guys are tricky. Yeah, no. Okay, we'll talk about turtles. Okay.
So it was the turtle. So Laura Moreland is your winner. She was the first one in the chat to put in the right answer. So yeah, so Laura, we will be sending you a little prize and I will email you. Oh wait, is somebody, yeah, I will email you to find out where we should mail it. We're going to send you an 8-pack of the note cards, the native plant note cards. So Alaine, we are going to sign off pretty soon, but thank you so much. This is always such a joy. And we're going to return to this very yard in the summer. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's what we hope to do. Yeah, it should it looked stunning, didn't it, Tammy?
It did. It looks stunning. But what's so cool is different wildlife in January to April. And I'm really excited to see what we will discover in July. So thank you so much. I am going to pull up like our closing information. Well, Well, actually, I won't. It is gone. So I want to sign off and let people know, thank you for coming. Thank you for spending your evening with us, exploring this native garden with us. We have all kinds of resources at deeproots.org. Our events tab has all the events that are upcoming. We have native plant sales this weekend. Anyone who was on at the very beginning, I was showing you some of our upcoming events. So this Saturday, there's one in at Shawnee Indian Mission in Fairway. There's also one in North Kansas City at Backyard Bird. And then there's one at the Ozark Fairgrounds. So get out there and get some native plants. If you come to deeproots.org, we'd so appreciate if you'd make a donation while you're there and come back and see us later. Thank you. Bye, Alaine.
Bye, Tammy.